Hi, my name is Erica. I got an A star in A-level geography and I'm an experienced tutor. Now I work for Geography Explained. Following on from last week's physical geography 4-marker that we did on the water cycle, today we're looking at one from global systems and global governance. If you can't read the question on screen, it is quite small, I realise. It says, outline the role of one or more institutions, such as the UN, in regulating global systems. The first thing to remember here is that 4 markers are point marked, which means the examiner is looking for 4 clear points or 2 points that are developed, or maybe a combination of both approaches. Breaking down the question, we need to notice that it asks us to look for one or more institutions. So you could talk about something like the UN, the IMF, the G8, or another global institution, but you must explain their role in regulating global systems as it says in the question. Simply naming these institutions on their own doesn't get you the mark. So one way to answer this question would be focusing on global financial governance. So for example, you could write about the IMF or the International Monetary Fund. You could write that the IMF is an international financial institution and then develop it by explaining that it helps regulate the global financial system by monitoring and advising the economic policies of its member countries. That development earns you the mark. Another example comes from global political cooperation. You say that the G8 is an intergovernmental political institution made up of 8 major economies. You could then explain that they meet at annual summits to coordinate responses to global issues such as international and economic stability. Again, that development turns your point into a 2-mark point. A third example could focus on international law through the UN. You could explain that global institutions help regulate global systems by creating international agreements and laws. You could take an example from the Antarctica and Global Commons case study, talking about the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, which established rules governing how countries use maritime environments. This regulates global systems by setting rules about issues like freedom of the seas and national rights over marine resources. And my final piece of advice here is that this can actually be a deceptively easy topic. We all broadly know what these international institutions do, but at A-level geography, you need to be quite specific about it. You really need to avoid vague or fluffy language and be quite explicit about the details here. So we need to describe what the institution does, what powers it has, and how much legal authority or influence or not it actually holds. Try not to get the different institutions confused with one another. I understand that that's quite difficult, but that is where our textbooks online at geographyexplained.co.uk will help. Follow us for more.